Hey guys, what's up? Luke here and welcome back to some quarantine content. Right now we are all spending a lot of time indoors, and if you are planning to play some Pot Limit Omaha, this is a great moment to do it. The games are running all the time and the player pools are massive. Today I want to give you some quick tips and ideas on how you can improve your pre-flop strategy if you are playing low stakes PLO. One of the biggest mistakes I see players making is that they are calling way too many hands when they are facing a 3-bet. People don't realize how high their fold frequency should be and how big the difference is comparing low stakes versus higher stakes. Now this is going to be exactly the topic of today's video. Let's jump right into the action. Here we have a first hand of myself sitting in the cutoff with ace queen 7-6 suited to the ace. Pretty standard open here, and the button 3-bets us. Now the blinds fold and the action is back to us. Now think to yourself, what would you do if this would happen to you in game? Would you fold? Would you call? The answer is that you are supposed to fold here. At low stakes, where the rake is very high, we have to be extremely selective with the hands that we want to call. A hand like this is simply too disconnected and doesn't play as great post-flop. If our hand would be ace queen 5-4, for example, where the 5-4 have connection to the ace, this hand would be much better and would be fine enough to call here. But with the 7-6 that don't add a lot of value and connectivity to the other two cards, this hand should actually be a fold here. Now at mid or high stakes, the hand here would be good enough to continue because we are paying less rake. But at low stakes, as mentioned, you should be very careful and very selective with the hands you want to continue with. In game, I made a mistake here and I decided to call. We went to the flop, 10-5-3, two-toned. On this flop, I don't really have a leading range, so I decided to check. My opponent bets a little bit over half pot, and at this point, I should just check raise. I have enough equity to stack off. I can generate fold equity by pushing the money in. And we have a lot of nuttiness if we potentially get called. However, in game, I did make the mistake by just calling. I think it's way too passive. These type of hands with nutted equity, fold equity, if they push, they just want to fast play generally, especially because we're out of position here. I call, turn is a deuce. It's somewhat of a mediocre car. It doesn't really hit my range too well, so I'm going to check here. My opponent bets again. Now this is somewhat awkward now. I think we do have the odds here to continue, so I did decide to call, but you already see like I check call twice and it puts me in sort of an awkward spot, especially on the river now. We miss, I check, and my opponent shoves, and we end up folding. The main takeaway here is on pre-flop. We're not going to examine post-flop too much here, focusing on a few hands where we get 3-bet and why we should actually fold those hands instead of calling. Let's move on to the next hand. Here we are sitting in MP, open raising ace 9-7-6. Now the open raise is pretty close. It's not a high EV one. The connectivity is okay, but not great, obviously, with the gap between the 9 and the 7 though. I did decide to open raise and the cutoff now 3-bets us. The rest of the field folds and the action is back to us. Now think to yourself, what would you do here? Would you fold or would you call? Now I tend to call these hands quite a bit with the suited ace, with 3 low or mid or low cards that are connected or near connected, like with 0 gaps or 1 gap. I tend to personally call these hands very, very often. And what I noticed is that especially when we have a gap on top of those 3 low cards, we are supposed to actually fold quite a bit here. We'd rather call down with a hand, we rather call here with a hand like ace 9-8-6 or ace 10-9-7 or ace 6-5-3. Like those kind of hands are much better here to continue. And the connectivity is simply better, and therefore we have more playability post-flop. So this hand is pretty marginal. I did decide to call though, not too happy with it, and I think in the future I'm gonna pay more attention to these single suited ace high hands with the nut suit that do have 3 mid or low cards that are not perfectly connected. And I'm definitely gonna look into this combinations a little bit more in the future myself as well to get a better understanding of what specific combinations I should fold or call. Now keep in mind that our range is supposed to fold out of position here from various positions. When we get 3-bet by someone and we are out of position here, we are supposed to fold close to 40% very often. And I'm pretty sure that almost none of us is folding that amount of hands. So keep that in mind. We have a very high fold frequency here in general. This hand is very marginal also. I did decide to call. The flop is king 8 deuce, two-toned. Now on this flop, I actually ran a sim for it to get an understanding of, do we have a leading range here? Well, we did have a leading range. It's around 8%. And this hand is actually a mix between leading half pot, and then if we get raised, we would call the raise or we would get it in there. Or we check, and we check raise versus a small bet, and we check call versus a very large bet. Now, I did decide to check because I was with the impression that this board doesn't really offer me a leading range because it's so disconnected from each other. My opponent pots, and at this point I just want to call. I don't see any reason to stack off here. I don't think I have any fold equity. So we call. The turn is an 8, giving up the nut flush. I decide to check here, giving my opponent the room to continuously bet himself. He checks back though. On the river 3, I think now I can make the bet for sure. I did decide to check though in the hope my opponent turns a missed whatever hand or a bear pair, a bear top pair, and potentially into a bluff, but I don't really like it. I think I should better bet myself here. I think the chance of my opponent suddenly now bluffing on this river is very minimal, and I also don't really expect him to trap me too often here. So I think river from my end, I should bet, maybe even a small bet here. I did check, my opponent checks back, and we win the pot. Let's move on to the next hand. King Jack 10-4, single suited to the king in the cutoff. It's a pretty standard open raise here, especially holding 3 Broadway cards. We can generate more fold equity if we open raise because we block some of the 3-betting ranges. With the king high suit, it's totally fine here to open raise. We open raise. The button now comes in for the 3-bet, and the action is back to us. Now at mid and high stakes, this would be a clear call. Because the rake we pay is a little bit less, we can get away with calling more marginal hands like this one, even if our specific hand will be dominated quite a bit by our opponent's 3-betting range. Remember that our opponent here is roughly 3-betting around 8-9% of his hands, and those hands are high card heavy, they are often holding double suits, and they simply dominate a specific hand like this very, very often. So we should have a good reason here to continue. Well, the rake at low stakes is high, so that is definitely not a great reason to continue here. Hands like this should be a fold here. The 4 is too disconnected from the rest of the hand, and we will be dominated too much here. In combination with the high rake that we're paying, I should just let this go. However, I did make the call. Not happy with it, and I definitely believe that personally I am overcalling these hands slightly there. I believe myself that with the ace or the king high suit here with these specific hands, that my intuition in game tells me to call there, but I think I'm a little bit off there, and I should definitely find a few more folds there, and it is room for me to explore there a little bit more and to learn more about that specific strategy facing the 3-bet here. So the flop is 9-6-5, two-toned. We check. We do have a leading range on this flop for sure, but our hand has no equity, no blockers, and can't really go out by a lead here. Our opponent checks back, which he will do with a fair amount of his range. The turn is an 8. Now we do pick up equity with the open ender now. We still don't have any showdown value. We block the 7-10, we block 4-7. So, I mean, there's a reason to bet, I would say, but we can also check. I did decide to bet here because I expect my opponent to be pretty weak here with his check back range on the flop, and we take it down. This is a hand I played from MP, Jack 10-10-7, single suited. It's okay open, but pretty marginal, I would say. I would open it from the cutoff for sure, and early position and MP, I think you want to be highly selective based on the players behind you. Not sure how aware I was of that in this specific hand, But overall, I'm not too excited about this hand in the MP position. Now the cutoff 3-bets me, and at this point, this should be a clear fold. We are too disconnected. We only have a 10 high suit. We are dominated with extremely high frequency by our opponent's 3-betting range, and we're paying a lot of rake at this level. Now this hand is not a great hand to call here. Even at mid stakes, this one should just be a fold, which shows that the importance of connectivity and playability versus 3-bets is extremely important here. And the fact that we have Jack, Jack, 10, 7 with only 2 gaps sort of, I mean, that's still too much, and we still should be folding a hand like this. I decide to call though. The flop is ace, ace, deuce, not too interesting. He bets and we just check fold here. Now the last hand, let me quickly see where it is. It is here. We open raise in early position with ace, queen, jack 3, single suited to the ace. Now this hand, it is a okay open from a theoretical standpoint, but I think it's still very marginal. The expected value of this hand is pretty low, and I wouldn't even mind just mucking it here from early position. However, I did decide to open raise it. The cutoff player now 3-bets me, and the action is back to us. Now at this point, we get 3-bet by a tight range in general, like 5-6% of hands is going to 3-bet against early position in general, unless we have a specific reason on our opponent. A hand like this is not strong enough to continue at this stake level. We should hold more connectivity to make up for the high rake that we're paying. A hand like ace, queen, jack 10, ace, queen, jack 9, jack 8, like those hands with 4 high cards with the nut suit, totally fine to continue, definitely worth a call. But here with the 4th card being very low and disconnected from the other cards in our hand, I mean, it should be a fold, and I believe that a hand like this is definitely a hand that I'm calling too often here and where there was room for myself to improve. Now, those were 5 hands to explore and to show you what sort of hands are we actually supposed to fold versus a 3-bet when we are out of position here. I see a lot of people making a lot of mistakes here, never folding or only folding 10 or 20% of the time. Well, remember, we have to fold around 40% of the time here, very, very often. And I want you to take a very critical look next time you get 3-bet here out of position and really think about all the components that you have whenever you decide to continue with your hand. Okay, that's about it for today. I wish you all the best in the coming weeks and months. Good luck at the table. Let's crush these games, and I will see you back here with another episode pretty soon. Take care. Bye.